everybody. I was listening to some people's ideas on projects, and I noticed that some people are very interested in photography. So we thought I would give you a quick crash course in photography if that's what you are looking to do. And this is like everything about photography, like crammed into one. Like it's gonna be super quick, but just to get you started, if that's what you're interested in. So, photography is based on some of the same elements of art that we would look at in regular artwork. Things like line, color, texture, shape, and value. And so I just want to show you some examples of photography through the lens of these elements of art that can help you kind of frame your pictures. The pun is intended. So, one thing to look for is shapes in your environment. These are photos that I took in North Carolina or in the United States in general. But you can find these kind of things, the Kathmandu version or wherever you are, anywhere. So this was just a garden hose that was curled up on the ground. And so it had made a nice circle shape. It was a nice contrast to the green grass in the background. Really simple idea, things that you have around your house. One thing that's good to look for is repetitive shapes. Shapes that are repeating over and over again in the picture frame is always really kind of interesting. So this was a whirligig sculpture that actually used to be right near my old house. Again, here we have another example of repetitive circle shapes. And then a little bit of contrast. So I've got this big dark circle and it's surrounded by all these small little circles. So repeating shapes can always be a really good thing. The next thing to look for in your environment is line. Can you find examples of line? And they especially look good when they are horizontal lines. And these are repeated horizontal lines here. This is actually sand at a beach. Leading lines are lines that can lead the eye into the photo. So our eye just wants to travel along that fence there, and then it sees all the little tombstones in the church in the background. So a line that starts near the bottom and kind of draws you in, especially if it curves your way in like a road, can be very good in photography. And line is everywhere. So your photos don't have to be all fancy, and they really don't need to have a lot of stuff in them. This is just some water grass. And this was something, this little circle here was, I don't know, something that was stuck in the water, like a leaf or something. And so it's very simple and it just focuses on line and it creates a very nice photo. Another example of line and going close up on things. So I know we're stuck in quarantine, but there's still stuff that you can find, interesting lines that you can zoom in on. Even a bug, or in this case, a caterpillar, can be a really good subject. Color. Color, especially, you want to think about balancing opposite colors. So if you're familiar with the color wheel, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in our next project, but using opposite colors, and this also has a focal point. So that red flower flowers surrounded by all the green around it, it really brings our attention to that red. Green and red are opposite colors, and they make each other stand out. This is another example of opposite colors, and they're called complementary colors. The grass is kind of orange, the sky is kind of blue, and they make each other look brighter. One cool thing you can do for art is you can do a light experiment, and you mark off a place outside that you're going to take a picture at multiple times in the day. In the early morning, mid-morning, late morning, noon, late afternoon, early evening, and nighttime. And you want to take exactly the same picture. So you have to mark off your spot so you stand in the same place. And what you can see is how the color of things changes as the light changes. That's the key to photography is light. So this is a really good thing that you can do if you want to experiment with photography. Maybe you're doing landscape photography. You might stand in one place at your house. If you got a rooftop, that'd be great. And mark off where you're standing and point it at the mountains and take a picture of the exact same place in the mountains. At multiple times during the day so you can see how the color changes and how the environment changes with the light. So that's a really cool thing you can do with photography. Here's another example of that. Look at the sky. It's amazing. Not a new idea. This is the Cathedral series by Claude Monet, a very famous Impressionist painter. And he was known as a plein air painter, and he would go out and paint outside, and he would paint what he would see, and he was very interested in light and color. So this is the exact same cathedral, painted from the same spot, but at different times of day, and he was looking at how the lighting affected the colors, which is totally cool. So lighting is everything. Experiment with different kinds of light. Natural light works the best. This one right here, this is going to give you your best tips for photography. It's called the rule of thirds. Imagine if you took a picture and you divided it into 3 even parts vertically and horizontally. So basically you impose a grid. You actually have this on your phone cameras to use if you've ever done any cropping. This grid pops up. And the rule of thirds says if you have placed things along these lines, it makes an interesting composition. And if you place important things, especially along where the lines intersect, it makes the composition even nicer. So what does that look like? So this was a frog I took a picture of, and I placed the frog's head right at the intersection of 2 lines, and that makes a pleasing composition. This was one of my former students' pictures, and notice that because it's so close up on the cat, the most important parts of the cat are the face, and it's specifically, as we can see of the face, is the eye and the nose. They lined up the eye and the nose at these crisscross points of these lines, following the rule of thirds, and it created a really nice composition. Another thing you can experiment while you're at home is texture, and there's texture everywhere. This is going to work better if you have natural lighting. So if you're inside, you want to shut off all the lights in the room and open the shades so all the light from the sun comes in, and the sunlight is going to make your best texture photos. It's actually the sunlight's best for all your photos. Don't use a flash. And you can create really cool photos that are focused on texture, and they don't have to be of exciting things. They can be things that are right outside your house, like dirt and rocks and things, and interesting plants. Again, the lighting on here is very cool. The light comes in and shines up the vines, and it's that texture. It makes you want to reach out and touch it. Focal point, I mentioned it before. This is like a nice example of texture and focal point. We've got all of this texture of the rocks, which is kind of interesting, the cement. However, it's this bottle, and it's an interesting angle looking down at the bottom, provides a focal point and a contrast to all of the textured cement. This is another example of both shape and texture and the rule of thirds. This is actually a handmade ball of twigs and things, and there are lights, like Christmas lights, that are wrapped around it. So at nighttime, this lights up really cool. But it made a nice focal point, and against the blue sky and the green in the background, that nice round circle shape really stands out. And it is placed along the lines of the rule of thirds, that little crisscross place. The ball is like right here, where the intersection is happening. Not, it's a simple picture. Same thing here. It's got my basic shape. My focal point is on that crisscrossing of lines according to the rule of thirds. And it's got this nice texture of, this was a sculpture. I think actually it was a giant bunny sculpture. The whole bunny body, rabbit, was made out of these metal working wires. But I went and focused in, and this was the eye of the rabbit sculpture. Repetition, talked about that a little bit. Having multiples of the same objects can be really interesting in your photography. This was moss that was growing on a tree, and I went in really close. A flower, and this is both, repetition, but it's also a nice circle shape. Um, that was really interesting. So when you have things that repeat, they become really interesting. These are just glass marbles in a jar, and the sun was hitting them, creating cool light, and I zoomed in. Okay, so that is your crash course in photography. I've taught photography for 10 years to high school students. So if photography is your jam and you want to learn more about it, I am here. That's my job. I will help you out and give you more tips. But for being stuck at home and thinking you don't have anything to photograph, that's actually wrong. You have a lot of things that you can photograph and find in and around your house to really extend your photography techniques. I hope this was helpful. Yeah, go ahead and stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it.